right, thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to be covering part 2 of a really exciting course for me, at least, to put together, and that's cybersecurity. We're going to be going into, and if you joined us for part 1, awesome. So glad that you decided to do so, because we talked about all the rules and requirements and what we have to worry about. But now we get into the actual risk assessment and how you start fixing what could be going wrong in your company, in your small business. It's geared, of course, towards us accountants. So we're going to dive right into that. A little bit of a quick on me is if you've attended any of my courses before, you know that I've been at the accounting thing for 25 years now, which I love. Truly, I love every moment of it. What you may not know about me now, only those who attended the Cybersecurity Part 1 will know this, but I have a little bit of a technological background, in the sense that for 9 years, I was a co-owner of a computer store in my valley. So it gave me a different perspective. Even though I was working for an accounting company at the time, that taught me so much about technology that still exists into today. So that was one of the reasons that prompted me into creating this. Is not maybe every accountant has that background that I do. And also prompted because of issues that one of my clients faced. And if you haven't taken part 1, I encourage you to. There's still a lot of great material in there. But here in part 2, we're going to have really important things that we'll be covering, and it's going to help you to perform your own risk assessment, to be able to look for those gaps, those holes in your own security. So we'll talk a little bit about just briefly what our requirements are, but we'll talk about performing a risk assessment. We'll go into physical safeguards, what you can look at, personnel security, and a little bit on computer systems and information. At the end, we'll talk how to put all that together into a written information security plan. And at the end, I'll give you a couple of hints and links for some templates that may help you in this whole process as well. So that's going to be what we cover. So sit back and we'll see if we can enlighten you with something new. My goal is always to do that and leave you with each course learning something that maybe you hadn't known going into it. So for our basic introduction, what we're looking at is that, as we covered in our first course, accountants, we have a big obligation. We need to safeguard our taxpayer data. We are a particularly juicy target for client information as we look at what kind of things that we know about our clients. We may be aware of Social Security numbers. We may have W-2 information. And think of the wealth of information on there. It's income, it's socials, it's business names and EINs and addresses, and we're talking about lots and lots of data. So this is the kind of thing that somebody who is a cyber criminal, they're going to really want this data because of what they can do with it. They want birth dates, they want dependent information, which could be socials, birth dates of the dependents, full names. Of course, income information, so just think of all what we have. This list goes basically on and on for all of what we have access to. So for this client information that we have, it's super valuable on the black market. Each ID can sell for 100 or more apiece. Each ID. So tax preparers may have many of them all in one convenient location. What better place to go to than their local tax preparer? If you just target a few of them, think of how many thousands of dollars, and that's exactly why we're becoming such a juicy target for ID thieves. We have a moral, an ethical, and a legal responsibility to protect this information that we've been entrusted to safeguard by our taxpayers. So a little bit about our responsibilities. We'll cover this real quick, and then we'll get into how we go about fixing all these issues. As e-file providers, we have requirements for safeguarding client data. As a Circular 230 practitioner, we do as well. So these are all areas that we have to make sure that we're meeting those requirements. We also are required by the IRS to report any security incident that should happen to occur. The FTC also has financial privacy and safeguard rules. Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act does, and all these you may these are banks, these are financial institutions, but actually as a tax preparer, anyone who has access to that tax information, we fall under all these rules and all these acts. And we covered a lot of this in part 1, so I'm just going to touch on it briefly, but Title 26 Code of the Federal Regulations, we have state rules and regulations that we have to worry about. These are all the things that make us required to be responsible, but if you think about it, we have an ethical duty. We got to safeguard our client information because, what would happen if we didn't? So I'll step into a little bit of the steps required by the FTC, because some of these are great steps as we say, okay, how do we start performing a risk assessment? How do we go about figuring where our holes are and how do we patch those holes? So one of their steps is they require somebody to take responsibility, whether you assign an individual to be responsible for safeguards or who that is, but that there is someone that has that position of, okay, I'm the responsible one for this organization. So that's their first step that they recommend. So you have somebody that is assigned the safeguards responsibility. You have to assess risks to the taxpayer information, and this is exactly what we're going into throughout this course, is how to assess those risks. But you look at operations, your physical environment, and we'll talk about what that physical environment is, looking at computer systems and looking at employees. So if you kind of look at just these 4 categories required by the FTC, this is a great place to focus energy into, because it's going to be a great guideline for being able to start to perform those risk assessments. You want to list a location wherever your taxpayer information is kept. So this may be that it's located on computers, located within filing cabinets, but what about this one too? What about the bags or the boxes that taxpayers bring? If your practice is anything like mine, sometimes during tax season, they're bringing in kind of the shoebox client, right? They bring in this container that has their tax information in it. We need to consider that's also taxpayer information, and we need to know where it's at in our office. And then we need to write a plan of how you're going to safeguard this information. So that's what we've kind of reiterated a couple times, that written information security plan. And it doesn't have to be fancy, but if we are starting to list these out and say, okay, here's where all this is, and then we take steps to safeguard it. You want to also use only approved service providers that have safeguards as well. It's not really all that beneficial if you go through all these steps and you're shoring up all of your risk areas and patching all the holes, but then you use some sort of a service provider that really doesn't give any mind to their own security. And you can ask them. Anyone who is paying attention to this is going to have that answer for you. And it's just the same as we're going to get more sophisticated society. You're going to have clients asking you what your safeguards are. So this will help in answering those questions. As circumstances can change, you want to continually monitor and you want to evaluate all these. It's not that we just create it and put it on a shelf and say, yep, that project's done. Because you have to adjust and you have to look through your security program needs as circumstances change and adapt and modify. So here's a little link if you want to see where I got what the FTC is requiring. So pretty simple, just ftc.gov. But all the slides have active links that you can click on, and that will help to get you there quicker.